Welcome students, Michael Forster here again. Let's talk about why you would even bother taking this course. We've already talked about what the course structure is, but why would you take this course? Okay, so a few things. First of all, different from any other AWS exam, I just want to tell you this, is that industry demand for AI is incredibly high. Is there hype there? Of course there is. It's a relatively new technology, but it's already yielding dividends, and we can already see the benefits it's going to give us. Get in now. Do not let this slide, because I just want to say that next to Kubernetes and cloud before it, AI and Gen AI are going to be the most significant technologies that have been released in this decade, and their evolution is just going to continue. They are going to be force multipliers for almost everything we do in IT. So get into this right now. This is going to help your career, whether you are at the end of it, the middle of it, or the beginning of it. So then why would you take this exam? Well, that's because this is a foundational exam, and it's going to lay the groundwork for not only any existing data engineering and machine learning exams that you could take at the associate's level, but AWS is not going to stop here. They're going to release future AI-enabled certifications. So that's the first thing, industry demand. Second, compensation. Now, I want to be frank. Getting a foundational exam does not always increase your compensation. Like cloud practitioner is not going to increase your compensation, right? But if you already work in a role and you've got certified AI practitioner, you're now signaling to employers that you're serious about it. So this may not only translate into compensation, right? Oh, this guy's like serious about AI. Like he actually went and got the, good job, right? She did great. She went ahead and got AI before anybody else did. But it's going to be a hiring advantage. If you've got two people who have commensurate DevOps experience and they see that you have certified AI practitioner, I have been a hiring manager many times, and I will tell you right now, that person would make me curious. I would probably want that person over an equivalently skilled and qualified person. So, other things to think about. First of all, where does this exam place in the certification roadmap? Because you were like, Michael, foundational exams don't typically increase compensation. What do you mean by that? But I'm going to leave the beta to AI practitioner. But notice our exam is, the reason I want you to see this is that this is a foundational exam, but do not think for a second that cloud practitioner and AI practitioner are on the same level. They are not. AI practitioner is slightly, if not significantly, harder than cloud practitioner. Cloud practitioner is really broad. AI practitioner is relatively narrow. So I just want you to see this, because this is a stepping stone for how you get to other certifications, particularly the ones that we don't see here yet, because AWS is going to continue to offer associate and possibly professional level certifications for AI. So let's get into this. So let's talk about how to register if you're taking the Certified AI Practitioner exam for the first time. What do you do? So I'm right at Google's homepage. I'm just going to type in AWS training and certification. What you should see is, if you skip down all the sponsored ads, is that you should see something that says AWS.training on it. Click on the one that says certification, or you can just go straight to the page here and then click on certification up top. Now, notice that once you're here, you should see an orange page and it says sign in. Now I'm going to sign in, and it's going to take you, and it might actually have a bunch of different options here, but the one at the top should say AWS Builder ID. If your company is not an AWS partner, and if you don't know what I'm talking about, then that's not you, then you're going to do the AWS Builder ID, and you're going to click on Create or Sign In. Now I'm going to sign in, and I actually have my ID tied to a personal email address, just because, I've been certified since 2016. So I'm going to click on this, and then it's going to give me a little bit of a challenge. And I'm going to say this is a trusted device, click on sign in. And then what will happen is it's actually going to redirect you to a cert metrics page. And it even tells you that before you actually click on go to your account. So you click on go to your account, and this is going to take you away from Amazon. And it's now going to take you to a cert metrics page, which is also Alpine Testing Solutions, recently purchased. Now you've got a bunch of items on the left. The main thing to know is that you can, for example, find your exam history. Like if you've taken an exam, like this is my certified practitioner, which I've taken recently. This, by the way, will give you your score report, which is probably important if you actually want to see what your actual score was. And then exam registration is what we're here for. So you're going to click on schedule an exam. Now, you're going to have to scroll down. And I just want to mention is that for some reason, even though it's out of beta, the AWS Certified AI Practitioner exam might be black here and not green like the rest of them, because you might need to authorize to take it. So if you click on authorize, it'll actually go through and say, hey, let me just verify that you have access to this exam. If it doesn't, you're going to want to contact support under support and facts, but I haven't heard anybody running into that just yet. So you click on schedule. And what it's going to do is it's going to basically load up the Pearson VUE website. And the Pearson VUE website basically is where AWS actually hosts all of the testing certification. So not the certification metrics and statuses. It's basically Pearson VUE is who runs the actual certifications for AWS. Now, if you have a choice, if you have the opportunity, I would highly recommend taking this test and all AWS tests in person. And the reason for that is there is actually a little bit of setup that needs to be done if you decide to do it online, and there's a lot of restrictions. So this one's easy, but we're actually going to do the hard one. So you're going to click on View. And this is really important. There's a systems test that you need to run. You have to read the acceptable spaces and what the comfort aid list is, and then the emission ID policies, as well as a short video. What do you do the day of the exam in order to get into the exam? That's what this video is. If you have never done this before, please take the time to run the system test, read this, and watch this video. It is incredibly important the first time you do it, because if you are not familiar with the process, it will actually take you 30 minutes the first time you do it to actually get logged in to take your exam. So if your exam is at 9:30 in the morning, you're going to have to show up at 9. Do not be late your first time. All right, so we've chosen on view. So it's given us a list of things, and so we're going to click on next. Private access code, by the way, is for those who AWS has given a code for. Now, this exam actually can be in any one of these 5 written languages. So this is all about the written language. I'm going to keep it on English. And then when I click on next, and notice, by the way, it says AIF-C01. So that's the code for this version, the latest version of the Certified Practitioner. Now, from here, we're going to go through and we're going to read all of this around the exam policies. There's going to be some data processing. There's going to be a prohibition against third parties. It's going to be a limited license to use their proctored application, the OnView application. They're going to do a little bit of facial comparison. They're going to look at your testing space. Notice there's a lot of details here about the admissions policy. So you actually have to run the systems test at least once before you get to the exam. If you don't, they're going to make you run the systems test the day you're there. You also must have one of these forms of acceptable identification. Fair warning, if you decide to go take it in person, I believe you need 2 pieces of identification. They may have changed that, but the last time I looked, it was 2 pieces of identification if you're in person. Just make sure you are aware of what this is. And then notice here is that there's issues with your last name, etc. You can all read the policy here. On exam day, you're actually just going to go back to the same URL, except this time when you go to schedule an exam, it'll show the exams that you're already scheduled for. So just make sure you know that you're actually going to follow almost the same process to get back into your exam on exam day. Also note that you can reschedule your exam 24 hours before your exam. So if it's 9 a.m. on Friday, you have until 9 a.m. on Thursday to reschedule. Do note that you can reschedule twice. If the third time you go to change the time of an exam, they'll ask you to cancel it. Cancellation policy is also 24 hours within the appointment. Other things you must know, and this is important, you cannot have any personal items, including a cell phone, watch, tablet, no electronic devices of any time other than either a laptop with a single monitor or a desktop with a single monitor. You cannot have water, briefcases, purse. You can have nothing within reach of you other than the laptop or monitor computer that you're using. So you're not allowed to take a break. You cannot stand up. You will not be able to take notes. If you touch your hand to your face, mumble, or speak aloud, they will ask you to stop. You do have to follow all instructions. And obviously, unless you have a medical reason for something and it fits the medically approved list, you are not going to have any consumption around you at all. So you don't agree? Notice that you can actually choose any one of these 5 languages: English, Mandarin, French, Japanese, Spanish, right? We're going to leave it at English. Anyway, confirm your preferred time zone. I'm on the East Coast of the United States, so I'm using the New York EDT. This is daylight saving time. I'm not going to change the time zone. I'm just going to say, yes, that's right. So make sure you're using your preferred time zone. And then notice here what's going to happen is that it's going to pop up a bunch of dates here that are going to be a slightly different color than other dates. It's basically telling you the days that you could take the exam. Now, this is 24 hours. So let's say I don't want to take it in October. I want to take it in November. What I'm going to do is I'm going to move the month ahead just a little bit. And I love taking it on a Friday. So I'm going to look at the 8th. And so because I clicked on the 8th, what's going to happen is it's going to show me everything that's available on Friday, November 8th. Now, oddly enough, it's showing me kind of the earliest time. Notice I would be checking in at 7:30 a.m. for an 8 o'clock start time for basically 100 minutes worth of exam. So notice that this is 60 plus 40, so 100 minutes. Now, if I wanted more times, I could click explore more times and I could choose different spaces here. I'm actually pretty fresh between 9 and 1 o'clock. So let's say I want to do at 10 o'clock. That's when I'm sharpest without coffee or tea, tea being my preferred. And so I'm going to book this appointment. And it's going to basically go through the process of securing that appointment on my behalf, checking to make sure there's no conflicts, everything like that. And then it's going to confirm everything. This is what I want. I want it in English. This is the time I want it. It's going to run from basically 10 o'clock is the start time, but 9:30 is the check-in time, and it's going to cost me $100. By the way, if you've taken any other certification with AWS, go under benefits under your certification page, and you will find coupons that you can use to drop this 50%. Now, right now it says $100, so I'm going to go proceed to checkout. And if you have a voucher or promo code that like you have either gotten from AWS or from some promotion, you would put it here and it would basically zero it out. Here's where, by the way, you would put your credit cards. Notice that there's a standard kind of set here because I'm listed in the United States. And then once you hit go here, what's going to happen is it's going to send you a confirmation. You're going to say yes, and then it's going to ask you to basically run the system test and all the other stuff. I'm not going to click next here just yet because I'm going to pause it for just a moment while I put in my credit card information. So what happened is that it then asked me my address. I hit confirmed, and then it asked me to put my payment information. I hit next for that. And then now this is where it's taken you, basically, it's confirming your order number, listing the description of everything, including, and then you can add it to your calendar, right? Add it to Google, download, etc. And then notice it's listing all the terms and conditions again, including my payment. Same thing you just agreed to, right? They're just really trying to make sure that you understand the limits of doing all this. Now, what's also happened is that I now have an email in my inbox that summarizes all of this and says, hey, this is what's next. So that's it. That's all you need to do in order to basically register for the exam. Now, if you click on home, by the way, it takes you back to the search metrics page. This is where the benefits were, including things like if you want to, use one of your 50% tokens or whatever. Notice that all these are expired because I've actually used them for previous exams. You could also, by the way, see all of your certifications if you want to see your certification status, right? All the active certifications. These are mine. Oh, I've let some of these. Oh, these are old ones that have expired. 1, 2. Oh, I've got 12. Cool. And then your exam history. So like, for example, you can see like I took the data engineering exam, didn't do that great. When I first took networking specialty, I also failed that, but you could also see all the other ones that I succeeded at. By the way, the networking exam, really hard. Exam registration, if I go to schedule an exam now, look what happens. So this is an important thing to note. You're going to come back in here the day of the exam because instead of showing you all the exams that you could sign up for, it's actually going to show you the exams that you are signed up for. And notice it says view, reschedule, and cancel. So view basically will take you into the exam on Pearson VUE's website and allow you to start the exam, which is exactly what you want. But if you need to reschedule it or cancel it, you can also do that here as well. Let's talk about AIF-C01. This is the AWS Certified AI Practitioner. We're going to talk about the exam guide. Now, I'm not going to cover everything in dense detail because you can read the guide for yourself. The link is at the bottom of this particular video. But let's cover a few really important things to just keep in mind as you approach this exam. One, this exam is a step above Cloud Practitioner. So while it is a foundational exam, it is an order of magnitude just slightly harder, more difficult than the Cloud Practitioner exam. The other piece of this is that it does require you to understand artificial intelligence, machine learning, and generative AI, like the basic technologies, their appropriate use, and some relevant questions. So you should ideally already have 6 months exposure to AI ML technologies on AWS. You will also need to know pretty much everything that is in the AWS Cloud Practitioner, subject matter. You're going to have to know everything that's in the AWS Cloud Practitioner exam. Now, what you will not be doing is you will not be developing or coding. You will not be doing data engineering. You will not be doing machine learning or ML ops. You will also not be doing any kind of analysis or security for AI ML at a deep level. And you will not be developing any governance frameworks or, to a certain degree, even architecting. Now, this is going to have multiple choice and multiple response. Now, I just recently took the exam. I did not see any ordering, matching, or case study questions. I will say that, be prepared for those questions, but I didn't see them on my version of the exam. And this is actually a 50 plus 15, so 65 question exam. Even though, I don't know, they tell you that 15 questions are unscored, but you probably won't know what those questions are unless they're just super wacky, meaning they're weird questions. I once took an exam, the machine learning exam, actually, a few years back, and my first few questions were really intense. I was like, I don't even know what these services are. Turns out that most of those, when I worked for AWS, I found out later that most of those were unscored questions. So don't let a bunch of weird, wacky questions that aren't worded very well or maybe to have unclear answers throw you off. That's AWS just testing testing whether a question is valid. Meanwhile, just assume that all 65 questions you have to answer to the best of your ability. Now, the cool thing about this is that you just need a 700 to pass. So it's a 70 out of 1,000. Now, questions are not weighted evenly. So even though you have 65 questions and 50 are scored, it's not like the first question is worth, for example, maybe 20 points, and the second question is also worth 20 points. They vary depending on the complexity and the depth of the question. So there's a relatively complex weighting for each question. But just treat all 65 of these questions as if they're essential to answer to get to that 700. Now, your score report, by the way, will contain some classifications. You can actually grab that at the certification site, especially if you go to exam history. So, now, this is the meat and potatoes of this, and this is where I'm not necessarily going to go over every little detail. But one thing to note is that the applications of foundational models, which is domain 3, is the biggest of the 5 domains that make up the content of the exam. So what this means is, since that's almost 30% of the exam, you're looking at just slightly less than 15 questions going to comprise the applications of foundational models. Then you've got a little less than 25% doing the fundamentals of generative AI. You've got another 20% about fundamentals of AI and ML, so different from generative AI. And then you've got both of these at equal parts, where it's basically a seventh of the exam, guidelines for responsible AI, and then security, compliance, and governance. Big deals, right? Now, you can see the details here. And so this is how I want you to consider using this exam guide. I want you to go through here, and for example, if you don't know what NLP is, natural language processing, or you don't know what inferencing is, you want to go through this exam, and every single word that you see here, like fit or bias or fairness or deep learning, if you don't know what those are, you want to write those down and go find out what they are. Now, what I would do is I would write them down, and as I go through the course and I learn a word, I would check it off, right, just to make sure that I've got it. But sometimes I'll go through the exam guide, write all those words down, and I'll look them up actually before I even take the material, just so I can get some context. For example, what's the difference between labeled and unlabeled data, tabular data, time series? What's the difference? What's the difference between structured and unstructured? What's the difference between supervised learning and unsupervised learning? Now, our course is going to cover all of this, but you want to know what you don't know so that by the time you get to the end, you have a very clear idea. Now that was task statement 1.1 in domain 1. So this is fundamentals of AI ML. And as we scroll through, you can see that 1.2 is listed here, which is practical use cases. This is describing the ML development lifecycle. Domain 2, fundamentals of generative AI. So 1.1, 1.2, 1.3, and then we're into domain 2. And 2.1 says explain the basic concepts. So like, what are vectors? What are embeddings? What is prompt engineering? 2.2 says, I want you to understand the capabilities and limitations of generative AI. 2.3 says, what is the AWS infrastructure and technologies for building AI? And then domain 3 is applications of a foundational model, meaning 3.1 is the design considerations for applications that use foundational models. 3.2, choose effective prompt engineering techniques. 3.3, describe the training and fine-tuning process for models. And then 3.4, describe methods to evaluate foundational model performance. For example, BERT score, BLUE, Rouge. Like, you're going to have to know what these mean. Domain 4 is guidelines for responsible AI. So you're going to have to explain the development of AI systems that adhere to responsibility, including safety features. 4.2 is all about recognizing the importance of transparent and explainable models. And those are the only two objectives for 4. And the last but not least is 5, which is security, compliance, and governance for AI solutions. Basically, how to secure AI systems, how to recognize governance and compliance regulations for AI systems, and that's it. Now, another important piece of this document is that if you're wondering if a service is in scope to possibly be on the exam at a very foundational level, this is the list to go through to find out whether something is actually going to be available or not. Meaning it could be on the exam. It doesn't necessarily mean that it will be on the exam. For example, I was asked questions about Audit Manager and Artifact, and that was 100% true. I was also asked about IAM, about Inspector. Actually, I think all of these were particularly on my particular exam. I don't know that I was asked any CloudFront questions when I took the exam just recently, but I guess my point being is that there's a bunch here that actually will show up on the exam. Now, interesting is that almost everything is out of scope for this, including most of the financial apps, all the compute for the most part, Red Hat, IQ, like all that is, a lot of the databases are out of scope. Most of the developer tools are out. End user computing is definitely out. Front-end web and mobile. IoT is 100% out. And notice there's a few deep learning things that are also out. One of these has been retired, actually. Almost all of the management and governance pieces are out. They are not used at all. All of the media pieces are not used. All of the migration pieces are not used. And a lot of the networking and content delivery is also not used in the exam. And notice there's a bunch of the security pieces that are also just not part of it. IAM is part of it, but like this is single sign-on, for example, that's not part of it. And then a little bit of storage. Honestly, most of storage is in scope for the exam. So that's the exam guide. I hope that was helpful, and we will catch you at the next video.